The mystery of Coral Castle begins when Ed was born in Riga, Latvia in 1887.
That part of actually Florida about 100,000 years ago is a beach. That's why you see its creations.
Hello, Roberta's family. Welcome back. In today's workout, you'll see your usual exercises on the left, and on the right, we'll be sharing a short story that takes you to a mysterious place as you move. It's the story of a place that should not exist, and yet it does. A slender man, working mostly alone and at night, built an open-air castle from giant blocks of stone. He raised walls, carved a sundial, balanced a 9-ton door that once pushed open with a finger, and then, when development crept too close, he moved much of it 10 miles up the road and kept going. People still argue about how he did it. Some swear it's magnetism. Some say it's simple tools used in smart ways. Others reach for stranger answers. This is an investigation into Ed Leedskalnin and the Coral Castle. What we know, what we can verify, and what's still foggy. It's written to be clear and direct. No fluff, just the facts, the clues, and the questions that hook you and refuse to let go. The man behind the mystery was born Edvards Leedskalnin in 1887 in what is now Latvia. He immigrated to the United States and eventually settled in South Florida. He died in 1951. In between those dates, he built the Coral Castle. That's the verified outline. It appears in public records and standard references. The site's real material is not coral in the usual sense. It's oolitic limestone, hard, packed with shell fossils, and common in South Florida. The blocks at Coral Castle weigh tons each. Many are shaped into slabs and sculptures: a crescent moon, a heart-shaped table, chairs, a Polaris telescope, and a working sundial. The place is now a private tourist attraction in unincorporated Miami-Dade County and has been on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places since 1984. But here's the turn that first grabs you. In the 1930s, when new homes threatened his privacy at the original site in Florida City, Ed decided to move. He relocated his work, stone by stone, about 10 miles north, closer to Homestead. Accounts say he hired a truck and a driver, but insisted the loading and unloading happen out of sight. The driver would arrive to find the truck already stacked with astonishing weight. Then Ed would wave him to the new lot, unload in private, and begin again. The move took years. After that, Ed quarried more stone on the new property and kept building. So the first question is simple. How did a small man move so much rock? Pause and hold that picture. Massive blocks, a quiet night, a lone figure under lantern light. We'll come back to methods, but there's a larger frame to set. The Coral Castle sits in hurricane country. In 1992, Category 5 Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida with catastrophic winds. Homestead took a direct blow. Coral Castle remained standing. News and later commentary pointed to the site's resilience. That durability tells us at least this much. Whatever Ed built, and however he built it, the walls and structures fit together with real skill. They were not fragile. They were not lucky. They lasted. Now to the object that pulls people in, the 9-ton gate. Visitors long told the same story. A child could push a finger into the stone, and the 8-foot-tall door would swing open with surprising ease. In 1986, it stopped working. A team had to remove it with a heavy crane. Inside, they found a metal shaft through a drilled hole from top to bottom, set on an old truck bearing. The bearing had rusted, which is why the motion failed. Engineers replaced the bearing in the shaft and set the door back on July 23, 1986. Later, it needed more repairs, and it never again moved as effortlessly as before. But the discovery mattered. It was a look inside one of Ed's most puzzling showpieces, and the answer was mechanical. Smart, precise, and mechanical. It's at this point in most retellings that the story branches into two paths: the romance and the method. The romance is well known. Coral Castle's own materials and many secondary sources say Ed was left by a fiancée in Latvia, often called Agnes, sometimes the Sweet 16, and that the castle was a monument to that lost love. The details vary, and some are more legend than record, but the motif of a heartbroken builder runs through the site's lore and the books written about it. The method is where the debate begins. Did Ed use unusual magnetic principles? Did he hide a secret? Or was it careful work with levers, tripods, pulleys, block and tackle, chain, hoists, and patience? Before we weigh those claims, a cliff edge. There's a real printed clue, two of them in fact, left by Ed himself. Ed published short booklets, A Book in Every Home, and Magnetic Current. The first contains his odd, plain-spoken views on home life and politics. The second lays out his private, non-standard ideas about magnetism. He writes of individual north and south magnets moving like screws. He diagrams a device he called a perpetual motion holder, which is not perpetual motion in the real physics sense, but a magnetic device that can hold a charge-like state. These pamphlets are preserved in scans and reprints today. Whatever else we don't know about Ed, we can read his own words about magnets, electricity, and how he thought nature worked. On the internet, these writings turn into 1,000 theories. Some YouTube videos and blogs point to the PMH as proof Ed tapped a hidden force. Others try to replicate the device and show that it's closer to a magnetic capacitor than a miracle engine. In other words, interesting, but not anti-gravity. The mainstream engineering takes hold that the castle could be built with simple machines, made strong by stone's own weight and moved using leverage, counterweights, and tripod cranes made from timber. How do we test those claims? We go to sources closest to the work. One name comes up again and again: Orville Irwin. He was a friend of Ed's and a building contractor. In 1996, he published Mr. Cant is Dead, the story of the Coral Castle, including drawings and photos meant to show the construction methods, pulleys, tripods, and techniques. Supporters of the No Mystery view cite Irwin as practical proof. Skeptics of Irwin's version argue he wasn't there for everything or that his book is incomplete. But as a data point, the book is valuable because it treats Coral Castle not as magic, but as hard work plus know-how. And there's more. The National Register nomination describes the site's two phases: Florida City around 1923 and the move to Homestead in the late 1930s, followed by continued building. Those are traceable facts in a federal record. They don't solve how, but they constrain the when and where. And they show that quarry pits on the Homestead site match the idea that Ed cut stone right there with his own tools. But then the story slips again, because Coral Castle isn't only a lesson in mechanics. It's an active myth. People come wanting wonder. Media old and new feed that mystery. A Wired feature 2 decades ago repeated claims of energy vortexes inside the walls. Tour scripts linger on the gate and the astronomy. Travel pieces tied the castle to pop culture, even to a Billy Idol song. The site's survival through Hurricane Andrew keeps the myth alive too. If it can ride out a Category 5, maybe there's more here than meets the eye. That's the pull. We're going to pull back the curtain now as far as the documents led us. Investigating the build. First, tools. Contemporary photos and displays at the site show tripods of pine timbers, heavy chains, hand winches, and pulleys. These are simple, but they're not weak. A well-built wooden tripod with a block and tackle can lift many tons when rigged correctly. Quarrymen used them in the 19th and early 20th centuries. With patience, a single operator can raise, tilt, and lower large blocks, especially if he stages the work and uses cribbing, stacked blocks or timbers, to hold partial lifts in place while he resets the rig. This doesn't require hidden physics. It requires time, a careful plan, and a safety mindset. Ed had all three. Second, quarrying. Oolitic limestone can be quarried by scoring lines and using wedges to split blocks along natural seams. The pits on the property match where blocks came out. Ed's walls often reuse those block shapes, large squared pieces stacked with tight joints. The precision is visual and practical. The weight itself locks the structure. Think of dry stacked stone walls in old farm fields, scaled up with a better understanding of load path and center of gravity. Third, transport. The Florida city to homestead move is often described with a flatbed truck or trailer, a hired driver, and strict privacy while loading and unloading. The driver's part was to haul. The rigging was Ed's. Again, there's no need to invoke secret forces. A tripod and winch can lift a block onto a trailer, especially if you built a low sled or ramp and inch it up with rollers and levers. At the destination, the same rig can lower it into place. Accounts from the period and later retellings are consistent on the basic outline. Ed hired transport, he kept his setup hidden, he worked at night. Fourth, the gate. When modern crews opened the 9-ton door in 1986, they found a vertical hole drilled through the stone with a metal shaft running full length, riding on a truck bearing. That's clever engineering. Set the shaft very close to the stone center of mass. Balance it precisely, use a low friction bearing, and a huge mass can pivot smoothly. When the bearing rusted, the secret failed. The repair team replaced shaft and bearing, and the door worked again, though never quite like before. That doesn't make the original motion mystical. It makes it precise and hard to replicate once you disturb it. Finally, the writings. Ed's magnetic current is often treated as a code book for his methods. It's more clearly a snapshot of his personal physics. He writes about magnets as individual particles that stream like screws. In plain scientific terms, that's not how modern electromagnetism is modeled, but it does tell us something about Ed's mind. He paid attention to forces. He tinkered. He built instruments like the PMH that behaved in repeatable ways. He liked controlled demonstrations. It's easy to imagine him designing lifts and levers with that same care, testing balance points until a rock moved with less effort than people expected. And yet, even with this grounded picture, mysteries remained, because mystery is also about missing context. Ed didn't leave a clean, step-by-step construction manual. He didn't invite observers while he rigged the heaviest lifts. Teenagers from the area later claimed to see blocks float like balloons, but those reports come secondhand and decades later. Coral Castle's modern tours understandably lean into legend. The site's official pages stress Ed's privacy and eccentricity more than any specific rigging diagrams. That's part of why the debate keeps going. Here's a useful test. When we finally did see inside the most famous moving piece, the 9-ton gate, what we found was a drilled hole, a steel shaft, and a truck bearing. No hidden chamber, no unknown field. smart mechanics. If one centerpiece works that way, it nudges the rest of the site towards the same class of explanation. A human timeline. Ed's story isn't only the stones. It's also a life in motion. He arrived in the United States, worked jobs in the West and across North America, came to Florida with poor health and little money, and started building in the early 1920s. At Florida City, he opened his grounds to visitors for a dime. After the move to Homestead, he asked a quarter but let people in for free if they had no money. He lived in a second-story room over the entry tower, close to the bell that visitors were told to ring twice. He worked at night. He guarded his methods. He died in 1951. The site later became a formal attraction and, in 1984, a listed historic place. Today, it sits on South Dixie Highway, drawing tourists, engineers, artists, and skeptics alike. It also became a magnet for stories. Newspapers and travel writers highlighted the heartbreak, the astronomical alignments, the odd tools, the hurricane that couldn't topple the walls. A pop culture echo said the castle inspired a rock song. Paranormal-leaning articles and forum floated Earth energy and vortexes. Physicists and engineers pushed back. And on Reddit and other long-running forums, people still trade photos, argue about PMHs, and link to scans of Ed's booklets. Here's what that mix tells us. Coral Castle is a Rorschach test. What you believe about it depends on what you bring to it. If you arrive ready for wonder, you'll find it. If you show up with a rigging handbook, you'll recognize the physics in the shadows. But that doesn't end the story. Not when the site itself still contains puzzles at kid-level clarity and adult-level depth. Which brings us to the simplest, most revealing scene in the file. A visitor presses a finger to a stone door that weighs more than 3 cars. The door swings. Not fast, not magical, but smooth. That motion is a quiet masterclass in center of gravity, friction, and fine tolerance. Most of us never think about where weight sits inside a shape. Ed did. Drill precisely through the center line, set a true vertical axis, balance the mass so there's almost no unwanted tilt, give it a low friction bearing, and a giant door becomes easy to move. The trick isn't a secret field. It's patience and geometry turned into hardware. We know because we've seen inside the door. And yet, the image of that finger on stone lingers. Why? Because the result exceeds our normal sense of effort. It feels like a magic trick, even when you know the method. That is the deeper hook of Coral Castle. It compresses a century of quarry skills and simple machine physics into a tourist-sized space and asks your brain to catch up. Most places hide the backstage. Ed hid the front stage and left the results. Still, there's one more angle we need to inspect closely. The claim that Ed used magnetism in a practical, construction-level way. He did experiment with magnets. He built a PMH, which can hold a magnetized state in an iron core. Tinkers today can build one with U-shaped iron and coils. When energized and closed, it keeps a magnetic loop. That can power small demos. It does not lift tens of tons on its own. Ed's own text reads like a personal theory, two opposing streams of tiny magnets turning like screws. It's vivid. It's not modern physics. But that difference doesn't discredit Ed. It tells us he observed real behavior and described it with his own model. That's how practical inventors have always worked. Could magnetism have helped in smaller ways? Possibly. Electromagnets can hold or release iron tools. A small generator or flywheel could power light bulbs for demonstrations. Coral Castle's tool room contains a big flywheel device often mislabeled as perpetual motion. Many writers think it was part of a mechanical power rig. None of that replaces the need for levers and hoists. At best, it fits alongside them. The weight moved at Coral Castle demands mechanical advantage, pulleys, tripods, and calculated balance. That's the middle ground a careful reporter can stand on. Ed's magnet experiments tell us he was curious and hands-on. The castle tells us he mastered simple machines. The gate tells us he could drill and align with high precision. The move tells us he could plan logistics in tight secrecy. The hurricane tells us the work was strong. What we still don't have is a diary that says, on Tuesday, I lifted blocks X with rig Y, and here's the pulley ratio. Ed chose not to publish that, and so the myth survives. But our job is to keep the facts within arm's reach, what the records say, and why it matters. The Coral Castle is made of oolitic limestone, not coral reef rock in the strict sense. It includes a sundial, a heart-shaped table, chairs, and other carved forms. It is a tourist attraction and has been on the National Register of Historic Places since 1984. These statements are backed by reference entries and the nomination file. The 9-ton gate used a drill vertical shaft and a truck bearing. It was removed and repaired in 1986 with modern equipment after the original bearing rusted. That's in multiple sources and is one of the most documented features of the site. The site was first built near Florida City in the early 1920s, then moved to Homestead in the late 1930s. Ed hired transport, but kept his methods private during loading and unloading. He continued to quarry stone on the new site. Federal and journalistic sources agree on those points. The castle withstood Hurricane Andrew in 1992, a Category 5 storm that devastated the area. It's a matter of public record about the storm and widely noted in reporting about the site. Ed published A Book in Every Home and Magnetic Current, which outline his personal views and his non-standard magnetism ideas. Scans exist. These pamphlets are real and accessible. A friend, contractor Orville Irwin, published a 1996 book with drawings and photos explaining Coral Castle using tripods, pulleys, and leverage. It remains a key source for the no-secret physics explanation, though some enthusiasts dispute it. These facts don't kill the wonder, they refine it. They shift the mystery from how could any human do this to how did one very determined human stage this much work with simple machines and a plan he kept to himself? Which brings us to the moments people remember most when they visit. The sundial. It's not just a display. It marks time by the sun's position, shadow on carved marks set for latitude and season. The design is public, plain, and clever, proof that Ed watched the sky and understood how to turn light into a clock. The Polaris telescope, a tube aligned to the North Star. It doesn't magnify, it points. It tells you Ed cared about true north, about aim, about the Earth's axis. It's the sort of thing a careful builder would use to get bearings for walls and a sundial. The heart table, a piece of narrative carved into stone. It anchors the romance story, whether you buy the legend or not. It matters because people remember symbols more easily than they remember rigging diagrams. Ed seemed to understand that. The walls and chairs. They're heavy, yes, but look at the joints. Look at the way weight sits. The clean fits and the lack of mortar tell you the mass itself is the lock. That's a lesson older than pyramids and as modern as pre-cut retaining walls. The tool room and flywheel. A magnet wheel, chains, and odd parts that invite speculation. You can imagine a small generator or a demonstration rig there. It feels like the backstage where Ed taught himself to turn ideas into action. Put these together and a profile emerges. Ed was not a wizard. He was a builder with a private vocabulary. He left artifacts that, taken one by one, make sense. What he didn't leave was the one thing that would end the campfire stories. A film of him at full lift, hauling a 20-ton slab into place, shot in daylight with a tripod crane clearly in the frame. And without that, the two narratives continue to run side by side. On one track, a lonely craftsman, a long project, simple machines, patient lifts, careful drilling, and a public that loves a good puzzle. On the other, a man who knew the secrets of the pyramids, who wrote about invisible magnets, who turned a flywheel and lit a bulb for visitors, and who might, just might, have found a trick the rest of us missed. Investigative work isn't about choosing the most exciting story. It's about weighing sources. On that standard, the balance tilts towards levers, pulleys, and planning. But it never fully tilts away from the allure of the unknown because the primary witness chose silence. The last night. In December 1951, Ed left a sign on the gate, going to the hospital. He never returned. After his death, caretakers found a small box with his savings. Modest, not a hoard, and the site passed into others' hands. Over time, it gained an official name and status, and today it's marked with the mystery that made it famous. People still ring the bell. They still ask, how did he do it? And the honest answer still begins with this: he built it. What can a young reader, or any reader, take from that? First, that simple tools are powerful when used with skill. A lever turns a small push into big movement. A pulley turns a small pull into a lift. A tripod turns a clear plan into safe action. Second, that patience is a force. Ed worked for decades. He moved the work when he had to. He built in phases. He did not try to do it all at once. Third, that mystery is a feature, not a bug. The parts we can't verify keep us curious. They make us test, measure, and replicate. When modern crews opened the 9-ton gate, they learned something. When readers build a PMH on a bench, they learn something. When a storm hits and a wall stands, they learn something. That's the right kind of wonder. And fourth, that stories can outlast stone. The castle has endured hurricanes. The legend has endured even more. Books, articles, internet debates, and tours that mix fact with drama. That mix will keep pulling people down South Dixie Highway as long as the walls stand. Before we close, let's address 3 common claims clearly. Ed used anti-gravity. There's no solid evidence. The best documented moving part, the gate, used a truck bearing. The rest of the site can be explained by known simple machines, as Irwin argued with diagrams. Ed's magnet writings are interesting, but not a blueprint for lifting rock at that scale. Nobody ever saw him work. That's often repeated, but it's not strictly true. Accounts mention people seeing quarrying and wall work, and school visits where Ed demonstrated methods. He guarded some steps, especially loading and unloading, and he liked to work at night, but he was not a ghost. The castle is coral. It's mostly oolitic limestone with fossil shells, quarried on-site and nearby. The name Coral Castle is a brand and a story hook. The stone itself is local workable rock found across Miami-Dade. Those corrections don't shrink the place. They make it clearer. And clarity lets us focus on the real marvel, a person who turned loneliness into labor and left a structure that still draws us in. That's the Coral Castle. That's Ed Leedskalnin's legacy. And that's why the story keeps moving long after the builder stopped.